Plans for a Future Age. Project dispatches Yale knouts into zero gravity. Tyler Krebs and Paul Moyser holding a Yale flag while on G-Force One on a new flight. Yale understudy Paul Moyser turned his head aside and saw his kindred travelers drifting about the lodge. "That picture will remain with me," he said. Nothing was out of order. Moyser and two Yale School of Architecture cohorts were on board a zero-gravity allegorical exploration flight, which imitates without gravity conditions in an airplane, testing model things that they had made as a component of a course, the mechanical artifact, Ultra Space. The course, offered this spring by the Yale School of Architecture, requested that understudies consider how people may plan for the lived insight of room. An astounding encounter, Moyser said of the flight, which finished 20 parabolas recreating lunar, Martian, and zero-gravity, zero-G. It gave important new point of view. For the course, understudies were urged to envision a design for another space age in which people populate the Moon, Mars, and circling stations. They imagined, planned, and manufactured antiquities of this future age. Items and gadgets, like stockpiling holders, blossom containers, and specific cameras, that may turn out to be important for the texture of off-planet life not long from now. As a capstone, 3 understudies, including Moyser, sent their models in zero-gravity. Puzzle box. Puzzle box compartment planned by Yong Choi. The course and the zero-G experience were essential for a joint effort between the School of Architecture, the Center for Collaborative Arts and Media, CCAM, an interdisciplinary examination center point that mixes customary expressions with science and innovation, and the MIT Media Lab Space Exploration Initiative, a task that supports cross-disciplinary examination pointed toward democratizing admittance to space. CCAM Director Dana Karwas, a pundit at the School of Architecture, set up and showed the class with Yale alumna Ariel Eckblor, 14BS, establishing head of the Space Exploration Initiative. Eckblor likewise got the spots on the examination trip for the 3 Yale knouts, a term Moyser instituted. As the chance of interplanetary travel and off-world settlement moves nearer, it turns out to be progressively essential to consider how human existence will advance in space, said Eckblor, who acquired her college degree in physical science, arithmetic, and theory, and a doctorate in space design from MIT. It's an ideal opportunity to start deciphering the antiques of sci-fi into the real factors of our space investigation future, and the understudies' work in this class talked perfectly to that, she said. The course was propelled to some extent by Pictures of a Planet, Photographer in Space, a show curated by CCAM in 2019 that highlighted photos taken by NASA space traveler Don Pettit while he was a group part on the International Space Station. The show created such a lot of energy for the crossing point of craftsmanship and science, Karwas said. Ware talked compellingly about the fascinating designing difficulties with regards to space, yet he likewise noticed how rich a climate it was for inventiveness. I needed to take advantage of that energy, so it appeared well and good to show a class zeroed in on space investigation and design. The understudies didn't exactly all go to space, yet it was very close. Astute relics. In planning their ancient rarities, the understudies examined portrayals of room life in mainstream society, for example, the 1968 Stanley Kubrick film, 2001, A Space Odyssey. Tyler Krebs, 21 March, drew motivation from different space pictures, including the famous blue marble photo of Earth taken by the Apollo 17 group in 1972, and pictures from the inside of the International Space Station, portraying chambers weighed down with unpredictable instrument boards yet no vegetation. Krebs imagined a thought that may empower future explorers to appreciate orchids, greeneries, or philodendrons in space. His space jar was intended to house and feed plants in weightless conditions. The model looks like Sputnik, Earth's first fake satellite, and highlights an independent water supply and a LED light to advance photosynthesis. Space jar. Tyler Krebs' space jar. With the jar, Krebs endeavored to make a perplexing environment that gives excellence and requires consideration. In space, The tasteful and mental effect of seeing and really focusing on a plant bears clear advantages, he clarified. In another venture, Moisa collaborated with individual understudy Yang Tian to make a camera device that means to pass on the sensation of weightlessness, and to make watchers question the idea of direction as experienced on Earth and in space. In particular, the gadget comprises of a GoPro camera housed inside a plastic compartment with acrylic mirrors and a free gliding coin intended to give the watcher a visual milestone. Essentially, we were attempting to check whether we could catch three-dimensionality through ordinary video rather than augmented reality, said Moisa. Other understudy-made models incorporated a puzzle box stockpiling unit intended for a zero-gravity climate, in this way delivering racks pointless, and a bunch of vibration-producing wearable sensors intended to empower individuals to arrange themselves and convey in zero gravity. Their work was evaluated by a board of specialists, researchers, and fashioners that included Pettit, who offered the understudies a feeling of how their articles would act in weightlessness. The design understudies, Karwas said, had the inventiveness and expertise to flex their imagination while clinging to the flight conventions, and to do as such under a tight course of events. Their models were perfectly created, she said. They carried a noteworthy degree of meticulousness to their work. Furthermore, they played around with the task, adding capricious contacts to their models. For instance, the unmistakable globe that framed the body of Krebs Jar was planned so that 70% of its surface region would show water while the plant possesses the leftover 30%, coordinating with the Earth's water-to-land proportion. Its three-prong legs, a gesture to Sputnik's unique radio wires, a spring stack to dispatch the container into zero gravity. Krebs housed the container in a plastic box, where it would skim in weightlessness and land on its legs once gravity grabbed hold. Would it work in zero-G? He got an opportunity to discover. Paul Moisa, Tyler Krebs, and Rishabh Jain. Paul Moisa, Tyler Krebs, and Rishabh Jain, photo by Steve Boxall, zero-G. Zero gravity. On May 20, Moisa, Krebs and a third understudy, Rishabh Jain, went with Karwas, Ekblor, and a MIT group to Pease Air National Guard Base in Newington, New Hampshire. Decked out in dim blue flight suits, they loaded up G-Force 1, an exceptionally changed Boeing 727. Ekblor, presently a veteran of 70G flights, first flew on an explanatory examination flight while she was an undergrad with the Yale Physical Science Division's drop team, an understudy bunch that conducts science and designing related trials during such flights. That experience motivated her to arrange research trips for her lab at MIT, she said. It's been totally magnificent and compensating to get an opportunity to end up at ground zero and offer this extraordinary involvement in my kindred Yallies, she said. Those Yallies were apprehensively energized before departure. Krebs' family was wagering that he'd become ill, he said. The hour-and-a-half flight performed 20 parabolas, up and descending curves that produce microgravity and zero-gravity conditions, mixed with times of level flight. The Yale knouts had 15 minutes or something like that to coordinate their analyses before the primary parabola. The specialists laid level on the lodge floor and assimilated the G-powers as the airplane moved to the parabola's peak, then, at that point rose into the air as it doved. The initial few parabolas mimicked lunar and Martian gravity, an encounter that both Moisa and Krebs found bewildering. It was insane, Krebs said. On the off chance that you did a push-up, you'd nearly hurl yourself entirely into the roof. The smallest leap made you float. Upon departure, Moisa zeroed in on the current work, testing his camera contraption and different models. Performing tests in the midst of the instinctive fervor of encountering of miniature and zero-gravity interestingly was testing, Moisa said. After the initial few parabolas, our painstakingly laid plans departed for good, he said. In any case, they continued and finished the tests in any event, when they weren't in finished control of their developments. Moisa depicted the vibe of weightlessness as equivalent to being lowered in water however without its related drag power. Paul Moisa. Yale knout Paul Moisa in Zero Gravity, photo by Tyler Krebs. You begin drifting and you can never oversee your body, he said. It was difficult to hold my body back from turning or shifting. He found that his body needed to twist into a converse act. In spite of his emphasis on the trials, he looked down the lodge's cylinder, which is the point at which he wondered about seeing his kindred travelers floating noticeable all around. Krebs, who overcame his family's presumption by not becoming ill, felt a feeling of marvel subsequent to relinquishing a pen and watching it coast. He tenderly jabbed the pen with his finger, and it started rotating. The experience of your body in zero gravity is astonishing. However, watching a regular item acting uniquely in contrast to you expected was intriguing, he said. The space jar worked well. Despite the fact that it didn't exactly reorient itself on its legs as expected, Krebs detailed. Moise's camera mechanical assembly encountered a bug. The coin continued covering itself in one corner of the lodging, yet he caught usable footer.